What's up, snobs? This is Shane here to give you my thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League. And because this is Zack Snyder's Justice League, not Joss Whedon's, I will not be using CGI to remove my mustache. The film synopsis reads, fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's selfless act, Bruce Wayne enlists newfound ally Diana Prince to face an even greater threat. Together, Batman and Wonder Woman work quickly to recruit a team to stand against this newly awakened enemy. Despite the formation of an unprecedented League of Heroes, it may be too late to save the planet from an assault of catastrophic proportions. Look, I don't need to tell you what this movie's about. This is the Justice League. Long before Marvel created the MCU, this was the most famous superhero team in the world. I grew up loving the Justice League. I grew up reading the comics, watching the cheesy Saturday morning cartoon, The Super Friends.
No offense, Batman, but I can get us there faster than your Batmobile.
That's okay, Superman. I can get more miles to the gallon this way.
And so I've been waiting my whole life to see these characters interact together on screen. What 90s kid could ever forget about the first time that they heard Batman acknowledge Superman in the cinematic classic Batman and Robin?
This is why Superman works alone.
However, DC started their cinematic universe in 2013 with Man of Steel, and 2017's Justice League was supposed to be the big culmination of it all. This was supposed to be the first time that we get to see these legendary heroes on screen together. However, this production had a number of issues behind the scenes. They've been well documented, and I don't need to recount them here. And Zack Snyder had to leave the project to deal with personal tragedy in his family. For whatever reason, at that time, the studio decided that they needed to completely change the movie, and they really butchered it. They completely reshot the movie, they changed the tone, they altered the story, they introduced the world to this nightmare fuel. I saw Justice League on opening night, and I remember sitting in the theater for about 5 minutes after the movie finished, just absolutely dumbfounded. I could not believe that a major studio had spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this movie and actually released it to the public. The plot was flimsy, the tone was so goofy and lame, there were these giant story holes and missing motivations, and even the visuals looked cartoonish. Zack Snyder has never been my favorite director. I've always found his work to be mostly style over substance. It looks cool, but there's not a lot of depth there. I think he's a great cinematographer, but he's never been my favorite storyteller. And so when I heard that they were finally releasing the Snyder Cut, I found it hard to believe that Zack Snyder was going to be the one who could fix the train wreck that was 2017's Justice League. I was intrigued, but I was prepared to be disappointed again. I'm thrilled to say that I was totally wrong. I really enjoyed this movie, and I found it to be superior to the theatrical version in almost every single way possible. So let's break down what works and what doesn't work. Let's start by talking about the negatives. For some people, the length will be an issue, as the movie's just over 4 hours long. However, because it's on streaming, it's broken up into different parts, and so you're able to pause it if you so choose and come back and watch it later like you would for a miniseries or something like that. For me personally, I didn't find the length to be an issue at all. It didn't feel any longer than a Lord of the Rings movie or Avengers Endgame or anything like that. And then there wasn't really a lot that I think that they should have cut out. The only part that I would say maybe they could have trimmed is the epilogue. After the main movie finishes, there's an extended epilogue that kind of continues to go and go and go. And there's one scene in particular that you'll definitely know when you see. It doesn't quite feel like it belongs in this movie, and so I think they could have shaved that out and cut the runtime down under 4 hours. But other than that, there's not really much that I would have sacrificed in order to get that runtime down. The CGI is also a little bit unfinished. About 95% of the time, it looks great, it looks cinematic quality, but every now and then there's a shot where you can tell that they could have used some more time finishing up the CGI. The only other negative that I really have is that it definitely feels like the setup to a larger universe. If we never get a sequel to this, which I really hope that we do, but if we never get a sequel to this, there's a lot of plot threads that are just kind of left dangling. There's clear Easter eggs and setups and plants for where the story is going, and so if we never get that, this will definitely feel like part one of a two-part movie. The plot is still pretty light, as it was in 2017. It makes more sense, but it's still pretty light. And that's saying something in a 4-hour movie. And that's because most of the screen time goes towards character development and setting up the team and all of that. And all of that stuff really works, but the plot does leave some to be desired. But other than that, I don't really have too many negatives about this film. So let's talk about what does work. From a technical standpoint, it's exactly what you would expect from a Zack Snyder movie. A lot of big, grand, sweeping shots and slow motion action scenes with acoustic versions of famous songs. Are some of these shots gratuitous? Absolutely. But it all works towards a epic scale that Snyder is trying to establish with this movie. Also, in order to preserve his vision, HBO Max chose to air the movie in its original aspect ratio, and so there are going to be black bars on the sides of your screen. However, after about 10 minutes, I stopped noticing these. I was so engrossed in the film that this really wasn't an issue or a distraction for me at all. From a storytelling perspective, I think this is the most effective work I've ever seen from Zack Snyder. I actually cared about these characters. I felt invested in them. I liked watching their emotional journeys, not just the action on screen, but I actually cared about their character arcs. And this is especially true for Cyborg and The Flash. I think these two suffer the most from the changes that Joss Whedon made when he came in. Cyborg in particular, I couldn't have cared less about him in the 2017 version, but in Zack Snyder's cut, Snyder describes him as the heart of the movie, and that's really true. When you look at the scenes that Warner Brothers chose to remove, the emotional and story beats that they took out are shocking. And so to see those restored into Snyder's original vision really changes the way that you feel about Cyborg. And the same is true for The Flash. He was kind of an obnoxious punchline in the Joss Whedon version, but here he's a compelling and interesting character. He's very sympathetic and likable, and he's someone that you want to see more of. I loved seeing the way that this character's journey was presented, and I loved the way that his powers are used on screen and just the completely different look and feel that it has in this version. It made me want to see more of both of them in a solo film. While the other characters don't get as many changes as these two do, they all benefit from this version of the movie. Aquaman feels more consistent with his character as we see him later in his solo film. Wonder Woman's action scenes feel more important, and she seems a lot more powerful in this. Batman feels like Batman again, and Superman takes another step towards fulfilling that journey that's set up in Man of Steel. What works the most in the movie is the tone. It's cool, it's fun, it's funny, it's epic, and most importantly, it never falls into being lame or goofy the way that the 2017 version is. It's exactly what a superhero movie should be. And this movie has fun, like I said, but it also takes itself seriously in a way that comic book movies are afraid to do so often. This movie isn't high art, it's not Nomadland, it's not Minari, but it doesn't need to be. It's a fun, enjoyable time. This is the most enjoyable movie that I've seen in months. This is exactly what I want out of a Justice League movie. In fact, it's hard to imagine a better version of a Justice League movie, and so I am so glad that we finally have a definitive version of these heroes on screen. This movie fixes nearly all the problems from the 2017 version. The theatrical cut had massive story issues. It's impossible to make sense of what's going on. You don't know what's happening or why characters are doing what they're doing, and it's because there's giant chunks of the story just completely cut out and left on the cutting room floor. And so restoring them here makes everything work better together. As I said, the plot isn't amazing, but at least it makes sense now. And by the time we get to the climax, it doesn't feel like this obligatory battle between two-dimensional archetypes and a generic CGI bad guy. It feels earned. It feels like the natural consequence of the story. It feels like an actual climax, like a showdown between fleshed out three-dimensional characters that we've invested in and we care about, fighting against a bad guy that we understand over stakes that are clear. Everything about the story works better in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I can't fathom how people saw this footage and decided to make the changes that they ended up making. Those bad decisions derailed an entire cinematic universe, and they may end up costing the studio billions of dollars in unrealized potential revenue. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that this movie is a huge success. The fans have been instrumental. They've never let this vision die. They've been petitioning for this Snyder Cut to be released for years and years, and it finally happened. And so while this is a victory for the fans, I hope that there is such a groundswell of support that the studio makes a sequel to this movie, because it would be a real shame to come this far and not see where this story was going. I think, like I said, this is the perfect version of a Justice League movie. And so it is set up for the future, and I want to see this explored in the future, and hopefully we'll get to see those sequels. In summary, Zack Snyder's Justice League is a long epic that earns its runtime with awesome visuals, grand fight scenes, and surprisingly great character work. This is the Justice League movie that fans have been waiting to see. Zack Snyder's Justice League is streaming now on HBO Max. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Thank you guys so much for checking out this review. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Come back on Monday where I will be sharing my thoughts on the first episode of Marvel's new Disney Plus show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.